I think it's a handful of things that play into each other. Everything from industrialization, population, to resourcing and financing.
Well, of course, it fits into a larger pattern that depends on what section of any kind of urban area or even a rural area that you live. But let's just take a typical American city. Um, the sections of the city where people don't have access to a bank, public transit, on, have already got even more basic, fundamental problems of access and proximity, and you could just add this on top of it. Matter of fact, even thinking in terms of things like organic and things like that. I mean, that's also something that's usually too expensive for people that live in those sections of cities.
Those big grocery stores have to get certain margins. And when they don't, they leave, and then we have this big empty store that's really not serving the community.
Just really, to me, it's like a cultural thing. Or if other areas, maybe because there's not the resources for employment, so you'll have a highly homeless area where people have inability to get to food.
Growing up in a small town of Essex, Connecticut, I never thought about the access to food. It never crossed my mind that if I really needed to do so, I could walk the 6 minutes to get fresh produce. Even though my parents had always had a car, and I would always have a means of transportation if need be, there would never be an issue of me getting food due to the close proximity of the grocery store. It was a shock to me to hear that there are actually things called food deserts. Food deserts are deprived areas of cities with poor access to retail provisions of healthy, nutritional foods that are essential to a diet. The U.S. Department of Agriculture defines a food desert as a census tract in which 33% of the population, or 500 people, whichever is less, live more than a mile away from a grocery store in an urban area, or more than 120 miles away in a rural area. An estimated 23.5 million people live in such areas. These areas are noticeably present in the region of Hillsborough County. I wanted to ask my peers, as well as professors and experts, how they define these places of food insecurity.
And a food desert is something that is a term that I don't like to use because deserts are a naturally occurring thing in nature. You know, things die, they happen. It may take millions of years, but they're naturally occurring. And when you talk about a food desert, those aren't so natural. Those happen because of policies that were put in place, a community being disinvested in, and people pulling out because there is not enough margin in a community to build profit, or the profit that usually an outside source wants to sustain in a community.
So what a food desert is say if somebody lived in a food desert, that means that they don't have access to food within a reasonable amount of distance from their home, whatever their transportation situation is. But if they can't easily access, say, a grocery store, or some quality food within a convenient amount of time or distance, then they would be considered to live in a food desert. And then there's also something called a food swamp, which is really important to understand too, where somebody might be down the road from McDonald's and Arby's and a
7-Eleven.
KFC. Yeah, exactly. So on paper it might look like there's food in their immediate area, but it's there's nothing healthy around them, and it's nothing that can give them the nutrition that they need to be a healthy person. So.
To me, a food desert is an area of a population that's unserved. They can't get to food. They don't have the resources to bring it in, so we would bring the food to them. They may not have transportation. There may not be affordable stores, and that to me is an impoverished or a desert, someplace where the food doesn't exist or not easily accessible.
These areas obviously do not appear out of thin air. So I wanted to ask the question of how these food deserts truly arise and what are the main causes for this food insecurity.
Particularly in urban areas where you've got sections where people, like for instance, the banks redline, and they just move right out. And they have, so if you want to if you have whatever kind of job you have, you want to cash a check. You go to these check cashing places that charge an unbelievable amount of interest to gouge you, because the banks have redlined your section of town. They're not around.
And most of the time, that comes from policies that are put in place, or disinvestment of an area, or just when we talk about disinvestment, we talk about lack of profitability and low margins when it comes to traditional grocery stores and supermarkets. So that's, to me, what makes, or kind of are the biggest drivers for food insecurity, if that makes sense.
Because hunger, food, and health are very closely related. So if you don't have access to quality food, then you can have medical issues that pop up, and that sets you back even farther. And it's an ongoing cycle. But I know the question is more about being able to go to a grocery store and afford food, and so much of that is income. Do we make the food cheaper, or do people's incomes rise? As the cost of living keeps going up, that kind of rift between the majority of people and what can they afford it keeps getting larger and larger. So
Unless there were the proper finances put into place to carefully craft these supermarkets and grocery stores for people to shop in. It's all a matter of finance.
And a lot of lower income areas tend to be food swamps because it's cheap, it's quick, it's fast. So people that get people that have $5 on them can easily go and get a couple burgers from McDonald's, as opposed to do grocery shopping at Publix. So the market dictates that a McDonald's will do better in that area than, say, a Publix. So it's kind of it's chicken or an egg thing, but that's what ends up happening.
It's just amazing. And this city here in Tampa is, I haven't seen anything in any other place I've lived, including Montreal and places like that, or even Anchorage, Alaska, where I lived, had much better mass transit.
The community has taken action to help put a stop to these areas, particularly organizations such as Trinity Cafe and Feeding Tampa Bay. Now that they have joined forces, they are working hard on providing healthy food to those that can't access it, with projects such as take-home meals and mobile food pantries.
Feeding Tampa Bay usually has at least 1 to 2 pantries every Monday through Friday, and then there's also occasionally pantries on the week. I've been the mobile pantries I've been doing for about 2.5 years, 3 years, and coming out in different areas wherever there's a need. And usually the pantries that I do are pretty large in size. There's like about 275 to 320 boxes will go out in the pantries that I'm doing, and we're serving the local community. Some people walk, they push their walkers, their wheelchairs, or whatever, to get to the food. So, and they've been lined up since like 12:30 for a pantry that really starts at 4.
Bay and Trinity are now merged, so we are the same organization. But we do have over 500 partner agencies in our 10 counties that we serve. So there's a lot of folks. Those agencies are not necessarily kitchens where they're served meals. I mean, I think that's above and beyond what most of our agencies do. But we do have resources in other areas where they can go to like a soup kitchen or a food pantry, and they might not get served the hot meal there, but they can get some produce and some non-perishable and bring it back to their place. So I think a lot of organizations like ours tend to serve mostly the very local communities,
right?
Because folks that live 10 miles down the road, there's going to be resources much closer to them. It may not be the same resource, but a resource nonetheless.
Trinity Cafe has added a commercial kitchen to the organization. We've started doing takeout meals that are actually being stripped to some of the different agencies around. So people can get like a chicken breast, a veggie, and a mashed potato take-home meal. So people, instead of getting like your cheeseburger combo for $1, you can get something healthier for, I'm not saying $1, but for an affordable price.
I'm on disability, so it helps me a lot because I don't get much food stamps.
Okay.
So it helps me awfully a lot.
Yeah, and those
for me and my son. And they gave me so much at one time that I gave it all around to my neighbors, They wanted to give me money for it, and I said, no, it was free. So I'm giving it free.
Nothing goes to waste, even if it's the squash or if you give me too much. I've even shared some of the plantains with my neighbors.
Yeah.
And I've taken 2 of the cabbage heads down to a local bar because the mom was going to feed the people there for free during St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, and it's close to my home too, that I don't have to go far because I don't drive. I take public transportation.
We met here a few months ago.
Yes.
So now we're friends, and then
We're
we've been going
friends.
to the same church together, and
Yes.
we come, and I pick her up, and we come here. So
Yes.
we're like besties right now, best
Yes.
friends. Yeah.
Along with these amazing organizations, there are people like Erica Hardison, who is focused on community building and policy changes to put an end to food insecurity.
One of the things that I'm most passionate about is food security because of the impact that it has on people's health. So what I do right now is I'm president of the organizing board of One Community Grocery Co-op in St. Petersburg, Florida. So we're looking to get 300 or more members in stage 1. And then what we will do is we'll look for ways to do, once the membership, people pay a one-time membership fee. That's a lifetime. It's per family. It's your investment into the cooperative or the collective. And then what we will do is we'll start working on the brick and mortar, which is phase 2, and then phase 3 is where we actually build a store. And again, we are not just building a grocery store, we are developing an economy that's sustainable, that's starting, again, I'll say with people, and then the people will have a voice to make policy, and the people will help drive the economics that will sustain the store.
Through my research and conversation with these experts and organizations, I have learned a lot about how much these areas need help and how fortunate I am to be able to access food. I hope we can bring more awareness to these places in the greater Tampa area and help put a stop to this ongoing problem.